All right, how's it going? A bit of a late night stream. I'm starting what is it? It's 9:45 right now locally. But I don't know. I just finished up with dinner, had a few hours, and running a little behind on some code review. So I thought I would finish up, or at least continue, some of the code review that we were doing last week, I guess. So right now we were looking at this CL from Chuck, which is reduce allocation attributable to the slot table. Hey Nico, how's it going? Yeah, day was good. How was yours? So let's see. So the last time we streamed about this, I had these comments to leave, and this is where we said we'd pick back up. So let's just go right to that. So that was in slottable.kt at start group. And Chuck actually responded to a few of the comments that I had. Let me see, where are those responses? Okay, here they are. So let's take a look at those and see what he said, see what we said. Okay. So I asked, did we have to add this for a specific reason? What situations is this protecting us against? Okay, so okay, this should not be needed except for validation checks. So I wonder, we'll have to see what move from, where move from is. Oh, okay, move from. Have we covered this yet? No, this is near the end. So I'm curious why move from slot table. It says move, insert, and then delete the group from slots. So I see. So this is a slot reader, and let the writer be inserting. So then this writes to the slot table. Okay. I'm not sure I understand just looking at this when move from would be needed, but maybe we'll see that from some of the other code. But anyway, so that was his answer to that. Would it make more sense to have a slot reader close? Okay, that's fine. Okay, looks like he responded to most of this feedback by doing it. Done. Okay, what's this? Update aux. I said, trying to understand the difference here between update and update aux. When do I want to use update and not update aux? The aux data slot is a special slot that can be updated and accessed independently of the rest of the slots. This was stored in the group object before. Allowed easy access during parent traversal. Okay. However, that is no longer the case with the new slot table. Every group stores an always up-to-date index or anchor. I'll consider removing aux altogether in a follow-up CL. Okay. Okay, so I mean, I guess ideally this ends up going away as like a concept altogether, which would be nice. But maybe it's like a two-step refactor, I guess, doing that. So done. This is where we picked up. Okay. So I think what I might do, because I was having trouble kind of looking through a lot of this before, what I might do is pull this CL down locally so that I can look through it more easily. So Alex Lockwood says, good to see you here, by the way. My first job out of college was on Chuck's team at Google. TLD. Wow, I didn't know that. So you know Chuck? Yeah, Chuck is a very, very smart individual for sure. I've definitely learned a lot from him. Okay, so I'm gonna cherry pick this locally. Alex, what team was that? Or can you tell me more? All right, so we've got that down locally, and then briefly on the Android Studio with Blaze team, and he answered all my questions. Huh. Is it possible we're talking about a different Chuck? I didn't think that. So the sort of career history of Chuck that I'm aware of, at least, was that he worked on Angular before this, and then Google Cloud before that, and then was at Microsoft before that, working on WPF and some other things under Anders Heelsberg, I believe, and then before that worked at Borland on Delphi, I think. So I don't know. I didn't think that he did much related to Studio before this, so just wondering if we're talking about a different Chuck. Okay, so we've got slot table pulled up now, and let's see. I think we should continue looking at slot table, but just pick up from wherever I left off, which was here. So start group. Okay. Oh, okay. Interesting. Well, cool. I'll have to. I'm curious. I think you'll probably end up watching this video later. I'm curious if he does remember you. Anyway, that's neat to know. Kind of a small world sort of thing. Okay, so I've got Android Studio pulled up and the CL. All right. I guess let's stick to the diff until we need to like actually see what's different. Oh, but this is from 4 to 8. I don't want that. So right now we are only looking at the diff between patch set 4 and patch set 8. And I want to look at the full change. So that looks more significant. Okay. Private fun start group. All right, so I lost my comments, but this is basically where we left off. So I mean, basically the slat table itself, you can think of it as like a flattened tree stored in an array, or in this case 2 arrays now, and each group kind of represents like a node in the tree. And so this code ends up getting called a lot. You pass in a key, optionally an object key, which is only going to happen if you end up using the key composable. And then you indicate whether or not it's a node, which means that it like is a materialized part of the tree. So like a layout node in the case of Compose UI. And then I guess this is any auxiliary data that's associated with it. Hey Marcel, it's yeah, it's wild to think. Yeah, it's morning over there. What time is it? Must still be pretty early actually. Is it like 5 a.m. over there? 6 a.m.? Oh, my time zones are off, I guess. What part of Germany are you from? I have so a very, very close friend of mine lives in Munich. And I spent a decent chunk of time up in, okay, you're up north. So my friend, basically who was a foreign exchange student in my high school, who we still keep in touch. He actually just officiated my wedding, but he grew up in Stuttgart, and I went over to stay a couple months with him way back in college, or no, not college, high school. And that was when he still lived in Stuttgart, and then we've visited a few times back and forth since then. But he now lives in Munich. And I'm just like in love with Munich. I think Munich is an awesome place. But I've still never been to Berlin, which I feel like I want to be my next German trip. Yeah, I mean, southern Germany seems there's a kind of a good mix of everything. You can find a lot of beautiful stuff down there. All right, so when we start a group, we may be inserting, and so if we're inserting, then kind of everything's different. I'm surprised. Okay, so node count, stack, push. I feel like none of this looks like I would expect it to, but okay. So we set the current group end. And if we're inserting, then we actually insert the group. So what is it? So all of this is the inserting case. I'm kind of more interested in the non-inserting case. So let's see what we do there. I see. So we sort of have we've got a start stack of all of the groups basically as we're traversing, but the like kind of the current parent is set in a local variable, and so the stack only accounts for like your grandparents and above, I guess. The current group end. I see. So if it's a node, then the auxiliary data is the node itself. So this is basically where the increment happens. And then we set this to the parent. And so current group plus group size, groups to group size. That ends up being what current group end is. Okay. So that is the non-inserting case, which is where like we're updating on top of everything. So So I kind of want to see what this insert groups does. Actually, I think it's maybe more useful to just look at this over here. So insert groups. I see. So we insert a group of size 1, I guess. Okay, so this will move the gap, and if the gap had been moved previously, then this will evaluate to false, which means that, you know, this method is basically super cheap in that case, relatively speaking, so that's good. And so we're inserting a group of a certain size, but if the gap can't really hold that size, then we go ahead and increase the gap. Probably usually going to be 1. Okay, so that makes sense. All right, so I guess this is where we like actually kind of create the group in the int array. So we've got the address. Keys in int is nodes bool. So these are all bools or ints, basically. Which makes sense because all this is going to get filled into an int array. Okay, so this is interesting. So if we need data slots, then we need to insert some slots to hold them. Hey Clisto. Clisto says, good to see a Google pip streaming. What do you mean by pip, like PIP? What does that stand for? Oh, people. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that that's a good thing for you. Thanks for tuning in. Okay. So basically if any of the data slots are needed, then it inserts those slots and then sets the data for each one. This feels like kind of a weird way to do it, but I think I kind of get it. Like basically all of these being 0 is probably a common case. And so you probably want to avoid the cost of this in like the normal case, but it feels like a slightly weird way of doing it. Like, yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay. New current, and then that gets end up setting in current group N. Yeah, Marcel, are you saying that you wish we had a ternary operator, or are you saying that you'd rather something like this get turned into a when statement? Anyway, this seems fine. All right, so let's go to end group. So every start group is gonna, end up executing the other code and then eventually hit an end group, and they should be paired like that. So if we were inserting, then it looks like, I mean, the logic is pretty simple, I guess. We just, yeah. So node count is node count stack dot pop plus, where's new nodes come from? I see. So basically we're keeping Hey Guru. Yeah, I was curious to see if I streamed at like 10, if this time would end up being a lot better for certain people. Looks like it is for you. Marcel says, oh no, the block is fine. I just feel like lacking a ternary operator is the one thing in Kotlin that's too verbose. Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish Kotlin had a ternary operator too, but I also kind of understand where they're coming from, that like now that they have if expressions, that you want to keep one way of doing things. So, but in general, I kind of agree with you. I often find myself wishing for a ternary. Okay, so basically we've got node count stack, which like for each, at the head of our tree, the node count should be all of the nodes in the tree. And then for each group, we should get, fewer and fewer, but it's like, it's the nodes that are left for that subhierarchy. So if we're inserting, then, let's see. So then What does that mean? So we grab the stack. So the most recent one. Where is node coming from? +1. Okay, so I guess basically like the node count stack.pop is basically this, and so it's saying, you know, equal the same thing, but you know, add 1 if this was a node. Otherwise, add the number of nodes that were below this hierarchy. So I guess as we're coming back up the tree, we're updating the node count. Is that right? Okay. So that was the inserting case. For the updating case, current group to be current group n. Okay, so this is just some invalidation basically. Like we should be, you know, if we're not where we're supposed to be here, then something else went wrong. So I kind of appreciate all of these sort of extension functions, right? So like we're storing all of this information in like an int array and an array of any, but like a given, you know, address in this nomenclature takes up multiple indexes of that array. And so to have these kind of method feeling extension functions on the int array ends up being pretty nice. So Guru asks design question. I want to make Shimmer to list one modifier extensions to make Shimmer. Okay. Custom row column that takes content and shows Shimmer if data is empty. So you're saying you want to, so let me try and understand number 2 first. You're trying to have like a row or column where if the data is empty, like, so if I don't create any layout nodes inside of this row or column, then you want to show a shimmer of some sort. Is that what you're thinking? I don't know. I think that's kind of a weird API, right? Like, I guess what I feel like I want is like what's an example of something I'll render? Like let's say I've got I mean, like the canonical sort of shimmer effect is like a Facebook news feed, right? So let's just say I've got like So list of feed item. I mean, this is, you know, pretty simplified, but like, let's just go for that for now. So if I had a column for item and items, and then news feed item, like here, if we've got the item, then we sort of have enough information to render it, right? So I mean, I think one thing that can happen sometimes is like you might have a like a partial item, you know, or like slim item. Yeah, I mean, you can just render a like just a couple of items that are, you know, like basically if but it seems like that's maybe not really what you want, right? Like I feel like what you want is, so if you have a, like, I mean, so this is a perfectly fine API, but I think you're kind of saying that you want something a little more clever. And so, I mean, maybe one use might be if you have a newsfeed item, you know, and we've got like slim item here. Then what we might do, like maybe let's just say slim item has like, you know, a title always or something, but maybe it doesn't always have a description. And, you know, it's like smart enough to kind of update the description thing or something, or even it just says like is loaded, right? So it's got some Boolean state to kind of indicate whether or not it's loaded. Like you can have text item.title, and let's say this is in, you know, a column or something of some sort. Like, and then you've got item.description, right? I feel like one way to kind of deal with this could be if you just said, you know, maybe you've got like a, you know, a shimmer text, and you've got shimmer equals item dot is loaded, or you did something like you know, shimmer item dot is you know, maybe you've got something like this. You know, and then maybe, I mean, maybe this shimmer composable, you know, if this ends up being true, then it just renders a shimmer, and if it's false, then it renders the children or something like that. Um, So group read says the best would be I take item and measure child and show gray item on them and just show 3 to 4 of those items for shimmer. So I mean it feels to me like the problem with that approach is that you don't have a child to measure, I guess. Normally whenever you want to show a shimmer, it's like when you don't actually have the data locally, which is why you're showing a shimmer instead. So I feel like normally you kind of have to fake it. So like either faking it with something like this, where you're just saying, I'm gonna take the kind of average or typical item size and shape, and I'll just render 2 of them, since there will always be 2 more. Or like if you have like maybe you've got an API that returns you a bunch of these, slim items, and maybe that's like fewer pieces of data, so it's like easier for the database to return that to you, and you kind of give like a best effort render, but then at some point that gets loaded in, and so is loaded goes from false to true, and description goes from null to something. And then you might have some API like this that everything just kind of renders on top of one another, but you're sort of specifying very precisely, like, okay, I'm gonna guess that this is like 100 dp on average, and stuff like that, because since you don't have the description available, you can't really accurately shimmer it, I guess. Not sure if maybe you're thinking about this a different way, but that's kind of how I would read this situation. Yep, no problem. So let's see, this is N group. So we were basically here when we started talking about this. So the new parent is the latest start stack. I feel like some of these stack pops are like confusing me a little bit. Like, oh, well, I guess this is N group, so pop makes sense. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense then. Never mind. So new parent, start stack. I'm not sure I understand what situation this is referring to. So the parent group was started. We just need to update the node count. Yeah, I'm not sure I know So this is the, where does group index come from? Ugh. All right, let's try to read the converse, I guess. So in the case where group parent is not the new parent, it says if we're closing a group for which start group was called after calling seek. Oh. Okay, I see what's happening. So like, we can, one of the things that we want to be able to do is to be able to like immediately seek to a part of the table where then we just start kind of composing. And so you might be skipping a bunch of groups in between where you seeked from, which could be the root of the table. It could be like, you know, somewhere else. And so if you skipped a bunch of groups, then we're not necessarily putting that in the stacks, I think. And so you just, you know, you start composing, and then when you hit end group, if it kind of realizes that like where you hit end group isn't like what came before the start group, the corresponding start group isn't the end group's parent, that means that you must have gotten there by seeking. And so I guess in that case, what we then do is we sort of, if the node counts have changed, then we have to like patch up all of the node counts in between. I think that's what is happening. Right. So this is where we're basically traversing up the parents and updating node counts and group sizes. Okay, that makes sense. All right, and then we return the number of new nodes. All right. So, ensure started is also all new. If the start of a group is skipped using skip. Dunkovid I was watching the previous episode and was like, I want to see one of these live sometime. Which episode were you watching? The just the one from today? This is pretty different, I guess. Or like the code review thing is, I don't know, something new I'm trying out, I guess. Oh, so okay, but was it the one that was recorded earlier today about function interfaces, or the previous code review one, which was done last week? Because this is sort of a follow-up from last week's code review session. Okay, so ensure started. If the start of a group was skipped using skip, calling ensure started puts the writer into the same state as if start group or start node was called on the group starting at index. Okay. If after starting the group, current group is not at the end of the group, current group is start a group. Okay. So I feel like this last sentence is the sort of descriptive bit that I needed. It implies that an end group should be called once the end of this group is reached. So it's interesting because right now the way we do skipping is we start the group and then we do some logic and then we skip to group end and then we call end group. Although we've talked about not calling or not needing to call end group. Basically, if we call skip group, that should skip and end the group. And so I'm a little bit foggy on why we might need this. Yeah, Dunkovic says, okay, the function interface one. This is interesting, even though I'm not really familiar with the code. It's nice to see how other people are using the language. Yeah, so I mean, if this at all seems interesting to you, you know, you can check out the basically the first episode of this code review from last week, where I mean, this is a pretty significant refactor of the compose runtime that my colleague Chuck worked on, and I'm just going through and code reviewing some of the work because there's not a lot of other people that have a ton of context into this part of the runtime, and I say that not myself having full context into this part of the runtime, but this is basically, it's a new implementation of some pretty deep stuff into the runtime, and I think it's pretty interesting. But I mean, it's not important if you're just wanting to learn Compose or something like that. But I think it is interesting to learn more about it. So this is runtime code versus the compiler code, which is what I was working on earlier today. And in this case, I'm reviewing other people's code to essentially sign off on merging it. So yeah, a lot of ways to go. This is a pretty big CL, but this file alone has 2,300 lines added. Gurupreet says, what would be your take if you were to do it in Java? To do the whole runtime in Java? Is that what you're saying? So I kind of want to find out where ensure started is called from. Oh, interesting. Okay. So ensure started is used for the root group, I guess, to essentially ensure that end group is called on the root. Gurupreet says, let's say Android was all still Java. Well, most of Android is. It's really just, Jetpack at this point is now being largely written in Kotlin, which is new and great. I mean, honestly, it's not like Java is a terrible language. So there's just there's certain things that would be more verbose for sure. And And I mean, obviously there are real reasons why we can't do compose in Kotlin because of our reliance on the compiler plugin. But you know, in general, I think that we're embracing a much more, you know, kind of Lambda-centric functional kind of approach, which lends itself very well to Kotlin. But the actual runtime itself probably wouldn't be, you know, terribly different or more verbose. Like I'm not sure if the runtime actually gains a ton from being in Kotlin, but certainly it would be more lines of code. Like that's pretty clear, but I don't think it would be that big of a deal. Okay, so the slot writer calls ensure started. Well, it has an equivalent ensure started. Okay. Where does this get called? Record slot editing. Where does that happen? During initial composition, when the slot table is empty. Record a change that will insert, remove, or move a slot table group. This ensures that the slot table is prepared for the change by ensuring the parent group is started and then ended. I see. So we could get into a situation where some operation is recorded, and it's important that, like, so basically, you know, when we read and when we compose over a slot table, we assemble basically a list of operations, and the operations are, you know, essentially calls on the slot writer, among other things. But like, it's kind of important to make sure that if you have an operation, that it's operating on the current node, for instance. And I think the way that works would sort of require that the start group and end group operation are called on that node in order for that node to get passed to the like other operation. And so I guess the ensure started thing basically kind of ensures that whenever this operation gets called, that the right node and everything will be passed to it. I think that's what's happening. Gurpreet says JetBrains is mentioning compose in all the recent talks. Good to see. Yeah, definitely. I agree. I mean, you know, JetBrains has been super supportive, super helpful, kind of all along the way, and I think they're pretty excited about compose, as are we. But you know, it is nice to see. Gurpreet asks, is overusing remember? Does it cause any issues? I tend to use on everything that may or may not change or is constant. I mean, so it may, I mean, like, remember isn't necessarily free. So there are certain cases where you may be adding some overhead that doesn't need to be added, but I don't necessarily think it would cause any issues. But like, it's additional cognitive overhead as well, because you have to remember, pun unintended. But you have to kind of keep in mind what the life cycle of the object that's remembered is, and if the inputs to that change, then you have to update the inputs to remember, and so that's that adds some overhead, cognitive overhead. Also, something that I may do on stream, actually, maybe next week or something, is there's an optimization for remember that I actually implemented, and it caused a bunch of bugs, so I disabled it. But I would like to re-enable it at some point by fixing the bugs that it caused, and it would make remember in the common case be a lot cheaper than it is today. So I don't know, mildly relevant to what you're asking, but let me know if that answered your question or not. Okay. All right. So skip group skips the current group, returns the number of nodes skipped by skipping that group. Makes sense. Group read says, please do that. I feel there are going to be hot takes on remember, state hoisting, and recomposition of screens. Yeah, what are the, I guess, like, if you're trying to predict a hot take, what do you think it'll be? I have my own ideas on that, but I'm curious what you think. Okay, so we get the current group, and then so we take that index plus current group size. So this skips a group that we're currently on the start group of, I think. So we get the new group, then we set current group, current slot. And so then returning the number of nodes skipped by the current group. If it's a node group, then one, else. Okay. That makes sense. Time space being says, didn't think I would get to see this live. Do you normally, have you caught other streams but just the recordings? And you in like a time zone that it doesn't normally work out? You presented your company, all the questions were around recomposition frequency and should this variable be hosted there, etc. Yeah, I mean, so that makes sense. Although, I mean, it's not like remember isn't really like a magic wand to make recompositions happen less. You know, the biggest factors on recomposition are understanding where you are subscribing to state, and what your state actually is, and then being cognizant of what sort of inputs to other composable functions you're changing based on recomposing, but don't need to change, like they're not semantically different. A lot of the stable inference work that I'm doing will improve the latter a lot, although only if you're like only if you have like pretty decent equals functions implemented, I guess. But yeah, I mean, remember can help you, it can help avoid over allocating, but it does also, like, to do so, it costs comparisons. And so there's some trade-offs there. And it also incurs, in some cases, some slot table like compose overhead that that wouldn't otherwise be there. So it just depends. But I would mostly lean towards using compose for correctness, not necessarily for performance, and then using it for performance only when you sort of know that that is kind of the expensive bit, that's like the bottleneck that you're hitting or something like that. What are my hot takes on compose design? I don't know. I mean, I think I'm not sure I would call anything like a hot take. I think I can imagine what some other people might think would be bad. I feel like most of my takes are the sort of non-positive takes are just like, they're things that I lose sleep over and like I'm worried about generally. But I don't know if they're hot takes. But the biggest things that I worry about are people grappling with the sort of gotchas of the programming model. I think some things with the programming model are much easier than alternatives, but then there are other things that they might just be straight up hard, or they're just so new that they feel hard. And I think that there's some in both categories. And I don't know. I worry about, I think the composed programming model pushes people towards allocating more often. And that kind of sucks on the JVM and in art. But it's definitely better than it was, but it's still not free or anything like that. And creating APIs and designs that don't lead to completely unnecessary allocations is a big concern of mine. I don't know. There's probably a lot more, but I'm yawning at a frequency too high to coherently talk about all of them. Gurpreet says, yeah, especially those who never used any declarative UI before, it may take to get the gist of the in and outs, design patterns, best practices, etc. Yeah, definitely. These are all important things. And it's something that every day we're trying to figure out where are the foot guns in the APIs that we have, and sometimes we have to balance that with what is a foot gun just because it's new to people versus what's a foot gun because it's just fundamentally a confusing or bad API. And sometimes there are good APIs that kind of start off feeling like they're foot guns because they're just different from what people are used to. Okay, so remove group. Removes the current group, returns if any anchors were in the group removed. So I guess this should be a were instead of a where. Yeah, the moving towards modifiers, I mean, that was definitely a the amount of hours that Google has spent for people on the Compose team to talk about modifiers versus single child composables versus, you know, whatever other alternative is just astronomical. We've done a lot of belaboring on the design of that, and I'm pretty happy where we ended up. I guess like the direction I wanted to go in was kind of the one that we ended up going in, but there are definitely alternatives. Asher asks, what time is it here? Right now it's 11 p.m. Which, you know, isn't terribly late, but I don't know. I'm having a hard time staring at all this code and staying awake, but I'll probably wrap it up in the next 20 minutes or something. Let's see. Marcel says, modifiers are definitely an amazing invention. This does remind me of a scenario I faced in my last stream, though, where I have no idea if I'm abusing them or not. I wanted to apply a dark gradient to the bottom edge of an image, transparent to black, but the gradient APIs all seem to take actual pixel values, and I couldn't find anything like an angle property for it. That's Marcel, that's a really interesting point. Like one of the things that came out of the movie app like that I've been working on is the gradient API. I found to not like work how I wanted it, because it was a pretty similar situation to you where I had an image and I didn't know the exact size of the image. I just, I was rendering it using like layout modifiers, like, fill max width and stuff like that. And so I didn't really know how big I wanted my gradient to be. And so I ended up having to create like a custom gradient thing that basically worked as a percentage of the resulting layout instead of like working on pixel values. And I actually raised this as like maybe an API issue. And so we're still sort of talking about it, but in the near term, you can do basically a pretty quick and dirty implementation that just uses draw with cache, where draw with cache is going to get it'll get the size, where with that then you can figure out based on the size what the gradient is that you need, and all of the parameters that you want, and then you can cache the gradient object and then use that during draw. And so that's probably the recommended way currently, but I was kind of trying to push us to maybe rethink what it means to be a brush, and whether or not a brush should have some contextual size provided to it, which would make kind of what you're doing and what I wanted to do a little bit easier. And so it sounds like what you were trying to do was like maybe a little bit more complicated because you had an angle involved. But I think that your experience there makes me feel a little bit more confident maybe in my initial feeling that maybe it was kind of wrong. And so you say you ended up using draw layer to rotate the canvas by 180 degrees, then applied the vertical gradient as if it were a top gradient, then rotated it back with another draw layer. Yeah, I mean, I think draw with cache is probably what you want, and then like with that you would, based on whatever angle you wanted, like let's say it's 45 degrees or something, or like if you're wanting to stretch it based on the aspect ratio, then I think what you would do is you would create a gradient that's not vertical or horizontal, but just a gradient, like a linear gradient, and then you'd specify both the X and Y in pixels. What I'd like to do is for maybe instead of defining it in DP, which maybe should also be an option, is allowing for you to specify it in terms of like percentage of the overall layout size. Okay. So back to remove group. Yeah, I'll go to sleep in a little bit. I'm a little disappointed because I wanted to get more done on this code review, but this is just such a big CL. I'm not sure that I'll get much more done tonight. I underestimated. Okay. So it's interesting that to remove the group, we skip it. And then get the anchors removed. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Turn an iterator for morning necklace. Turns an iterator for all the slots of a group and all of the children of the group. I'm curious where this is used. So this is weird. So we have a remove current group API. Takes a lifecycle manager. I see. So this is done before we call remove group. I wonder if is this the only it's kind of weird that that's the only usage of that. Code will make sense tomorrow. Yeah. This is in Like, I don't know. It's a little bit weird to me that this is this like extension function API. I think probably because of lifecycle manager, but I'm not sure because this is just in composer.kt. But like, what worries me is that, so we're calling the you know, the leaving for the lifecycle observers, which is important. And I'm worried that every instance where we call remove group without it, that it's like, it's kind of just a bug waiting to happen. So I would almost prefer that we only had one way of doing that. All right, I think I'm gonna try and write up that comment, and then I'll probably end the stream there. Let me see. So was remove current group added in this? Okay. It wasn't really. I mean, it was modified. That's about it. Okay, so let's go back to this one. So is that what it was? Hold on. Slot writer, remove current group, lifecycle manager. Okay, I think that I don't know. I'm curious. I mean, I suspect that there is actually cases where calling remove group by itself makes sense, but I just want to make sure that this is like, you know, kind of documented and understood, because I don't, it's not obvious to me. Dunkovid says, what playlist is this? So it's a playlist that I created based on the Pretzel Rocks chill playlist. Pretzel Rocks is like a music service that has all it's like all copyright free music. It's kind of built intentionally for streamers and YouTube and stuff like that. So I actually really like it because the service allows you to specify like instrumental and stuff like that. So now I just listen to it like all day. But I've been saving songs that I think are like good vibes for streaming and stuff like that. And that's what I play while I'm streaming. I don't have like a good way to link to the playlist or anything like that, unfortunately. But I think that if you're on Twitch, I think that there's like some component on like the right side of the stream that'll like allow you to see what's playing and like I don't know, like what's next and stuff like that. So maybe check that out. But yeah, Marcel was just saying that it's got the little bubble on the right. All right. Well, I think that is enough for tonight. Kind of a short stream, but glad we got it in there. I think this is kind of neat actually to just do some sort of unscheduled streams just whenever I have time and you know, just am working or something. So I'm glad to hear that at least like for a few of you it kind of hit some time zones that most of my schedule doesn't otherwise hit. And so I might try and do that a little more often. But anyway, I'm probably done for the night. Gonna be heading to bed soon, and I'll be, you know, hopefully seeing all you a bit later. But thanks for tuning in. Cheers.